Welcome to our Brainpower Breakthroughs today with Lorianne and Jon. I'm excited to have Jon here today, and you have got some really specific things that you wanted to talk about today. But just as a quick introduction, we are here to talk about success for teens, young adults. Jon has great background in this. I've raised teenagers, so I don't know if that gives me qualifications or not.
It does. Yes, it does. Yes.
So I'm going to turn the time over to you, Jon, because I know that you had some great thoughts today that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Thank you, Lorianne. I had a couple of things that I wanted to bring up today. Um, one of which um, I actually witnessed a couple of days ago. So that brought it top of mind. But the other one was something that I was thinking about. And then I met up with a friend of mine. He came by to see me a couple of days ago. And then he stopped back by again last night just to check in with me. And I remember this friend of mine owned restaurants. And he asked me if I'd work with him because I spent 32 years in hotel restaurant management. He said, can you help me make my restaurants? He goes, I've got good restaurants, but I want great ones. And
Yeah.
so I worked with him for a little while. And through the process of working with him, he asked me if I'd work with his staffs, which I totally love doing because it's working with those young adults again, right?
Right.
And I remembered something that I'd written down yesterday about, what we'd talk about. And this happened at one of his restaurants. So the theme, the statement that I want to refer to in this is I call softening your stories. Okay. Softening your stories. I'm going to preface this story by saying I have a friend that's a grief coach and an associated pastor down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he's told me one day, he says, reality is always a little more gentle than we make it out to be.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my God, is that not so true? And so the story that I was thinking about was that this friend of mine's restaurant. So I'm working at this restaurant with this staffs. Um, and we had a new gal start one day. And the gal that was labeled as the training employee that had to train this new gal on some things in the restaurant, um, she started telling this new girl a story about what happened to her on her second day of training. And it was really kind of an ugly story. I'm going to tell you. I'm
Oh.
just going to be honest with you. It was kind of an ugly story. She burned her hand really bad.
Hmm.
Um, but she started to tell this story to this new gal. About halfway through it, she took a break. The new gal went and did some things with somebody else. So I asked this gal, I said, can you come here? Because I want to ask you a question. And so she came over to where I was at and she sat down at one of the chairs. And I said, can I ask, why do you keep telling that story? And she goes, what do you mean? And I said, that story about you burning your hand. I've been here for 8 months now. I've seen you work with probably half a dozen new employees, and you've told every single one of them that story. Why do you keep telling that same story? And she said, well, basically because I think it's a really good way of sharing with them how not to do it so you don't hurt yourself. And I said, may I make a suggestion? And she said, yeah. And I said, find a different story to tell. I said, because when you tell that story, let me ask you something. Does it make you feel good? She goes, no. And, it brings me back to the day that happened. And I felt pretty bad about what I did that day and it hurt and all that. I said, by telling that story, did it check out? outcome of what happened that day? And she said, well, no, that was a long time ago. I said, telling that story, did it make you feel better about what happened to you that day? She said, no. I said, so telling that story, did it make you feel better about yourself today? She goes, no. I said, in telling that story, did it change how anybody close to you feels about you or relates to you? And she said, no. I said, okay, I've asked you how, I don't know how many questions, and you said no to every single one of them. One of the things that I teach is a thought called softening our stories. I said, would you feel better if you could tell a story that still gets the point across, but doesn't make you feel so bad? She goes, oh, that does make sense. I said, okay, good. Let's go on. If telling a different story, it doesn't matter whether it changes the outcome or not, does it? She goes, no. I said, so what really matters is how you feel about what happened to you that day. And she went, that makes sense. I said, okay. So we proceeded to talk a little bit more, and we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth with her story, softened it down a little bit to where I asked her when we got done, and I said, okay, tell this story. She told me the story. I said, now, do you feel? I said, do you feel that angst that you felt before you told? I mean, you told the story so brilliantly before in such a more harsher way. I said, do you feel better coming out of telling the story this way? She goes, well, I don't feel bad about the way I told the story at all this time. I said, exactly. So when you start telling stories, you ever think about how you're going to feel when you're done telling the story? She goes, no, I never think about that. I said, how about if you start trying to? Because if you know telling the story is going to hurt or make you feel bad or give someone else the impression that you're not a good person, maybe you need to soften that story a little bit, tell it a little bit better. We didn't change the whole story just now. We just changed a couple of things and it became a lot better story for you. And she goes, yeah, it did. Wow. I didn't even think of that. I said, so what if you could do that before you tell every story? If you just think for a second, okay, is this story going to make me feel bad? Is this going to make me look bad? Is this going to do this or do this or do this? And by changing just a couple of small things in the storyline, you come away, number one, looking better to the person you're talking to, feeling better personally. Isn't that a win-win? And she said, yeah, I like that. I said, okay, so let's focus on doing that from now on. And the next time I was in the restaurant, which was about 3 months later, there was this gal working with a new employee again. And she was working with this piece of equipment that she burned herself on. So I'm sitting there thinking, uh-oh, is the story coming? And sure enough, she started into the story. But she stopped when she got to the bad part. And the two tweaks that we did to her story before, she used those and incorporated those two things into her story. Made the whole story sound so much better. And when she was done, she was smiling. The person she was training was smiling. And after it was over, she came over to me and she went, thanks. that was a much better story, wasn't it? I said, absolutely. You feel better? She goes, I absolutely feel better. I said, then there you go. That's the story I want to hear you say from now on when you're training somebody on that piece of equipment. And she did. From then
Wow.
on, I don't remember ever hearing her tell that story differently. And so, the whole idea about softening our stories, it really is about how we look at ourselves in those stories. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, you go back and you live all of that. Your brain doesn't know the difference of it
No, it
happening
doesn't.
back when it happened or when you're telling the story again. You still get all the same endorphins, the same feelings, the same everything. So,
Exactly.
that could work in her favor now as she's softening the story.
Yeah.
Now she's not
Yeah.
releasing all those chemicals and her brain is
Mm-hmm.
knowing that happened in the past and it's not happening right now.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wow, what a
Exactly.
great tool that you taught her. That
Yeah.
that tool right there, just that one little thing that you taught her, if we all took that into our lives, just pay attention to the story that you're telling all the time. Even if it's a story you're telling inside your head about yourself, to yourself when you look in the mirror,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that story is, think
Yeah.
about that, pay attention to that, and start, like John said, softening the story,
Exactly.
making a few
How
little
many
tweaks.
times, how many times do we get up in the morning and put clothes on and then go stand in the mirror and look and go, no, that ain't gonna work. Last time I wore this, so and so said this about, and then so and so said this. And my mom said, you're not going out in that, are you? That's the story we think about.
Yeah,
So, how about if we soften the story, put those clothes on, go stand in the mirror and go, soften the story down a little bit. Just say to yourself, huh, I didn't look that good with that on last time I wore that. So I'm going to go change. It was simple.
yeah,
And no one's gotten hurt in the process of this story.
right, right.
So, yeah, I so enjoyed when Chaz told me, Chaz is my pastor friend from Tulsa, when he said, reality is always a little more gentler than the stories we tell about it. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, the stories we tell.
Yeah,
We need to change the stories we tell.
yeah,
You know, I'm changing the stories I'm saying about this. You know, I'm totally changing the stories I say about this.
right.
I mean, there for a while, yeah, I was telling a lot of stories about what the scientific information is about this.
Yeah,
And now I'm telling about how powerful God and me
yeah.
are and how we can change this.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
So, do we want to
Okay.
move on to the second?
Yeah. Let's go to number two.
Well, number two is something that um, my wife, Amy, who's also a coach, and I have used for years and years and years. And it's part of what she calls her Oasis approach. And number two is, and I'll tell you, see if I can put this, that
Oh,
Oasis approach, the
right.
OASIS. Okay. The first S in this is the term small steps. I remember, growing up as a kid, running down the street after it rained. And how many of y'all had potholes in your streets filled with water after it rained? Well, I remember running down the streets and I'd see this pothole full of water and I'd think, I can jump that. And so I'd try it. I'd run as hard as I could right up to the edge of it and I'd jump. And, as a kid, I'm not a very good judge of distance. So I probably didn't jump right at the edge of the pothole. I probably was a foot and a half behind it. And yeah, I didn't quite make it past the water. So sure enough, splash, water everywhere. My shoes are totally soaked. My pants are wet now. You know, I go home and my mom would say, "Why don't you just walk around it?" That was my first instinctive thought of small steps, because I tried to take a big giant leap.
Hmm. Wow.
And a big giant leap
Visual.
sometimes doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I'm realizing small steps instead of trying to do small step, 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 small step. Now I'm past the puddle. Now I can run again. Sometimes I think we try and take such big leaps in our lives, in our work, um, in our relationships. I mean, you can throw anything in there you want. I think we try to take too big a jump. And I think if we slow down and take smaller steps. Number one, okay, first off, when you jump, especially trying to make a big jump, do you have control over where you're going, what you're doing, where your feet are going to land? You have control over any of that? I don't know about you, but I never did. So taking a small step, you see where your foot's at, you see where you're stepping, you see that it's level, you see that it's not full of water. You can go left, right, forward, backwards, but you're in complete control. Complete control. And I think if we can focus on not trying to take too big a leap, you may not ever get there. You may end up with a foot full of water, a shoe full of water, you know?
Right.
But if we can just take small steps, first off, we can control where they go, what direction they're going in. And if you can control your small steps, you can go anywhere.
Yeah.
In business, I taught business owners to take small steps because I wrote a lot of business plans in the beginning of my business coaching stuff. And I loved writing business plans. They were so cool. They show you step by step by step how to make a business work, or how to launch a business, or how to create one, or how to back out of one. You know, one of the things I love the most about writing business plans is writing exit strategies.
Cool.
I figure if you don't know how you're going to get out of this, don't get in.
Right.
So I would I would show them how to do an exit strategy, but each step in the exit strategy was this big.
Mm.
Because when you're doing an exit strategy to exit out of a business, you don't want to mess up. You want to make doggone sure that that step is accurate, 100% covered and secure and correct for you, your business, and whoever's buying your business. That requires a small step. So I think learning how to take small steps where you're secure, you see where you're going, you see what you're doing, you know where that foot's going to land. That's security. I don't know about anybody else, but I kind of like security.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the second thought I had, was small steps, because I want us to realize it doesn't always have to be such as, this big, grand and glorious fanfare jump.
Right.
Sometimes a small step can make a huge difference, personally as well as in your business life.
Right.
I know it's made huge steps for me in my business life. I'm learning to start taking small steps right now. going through this, one of the things I've learned is I had to learn to do a lot of things in almost childlike manner.
Mm.
You know, when my tumor was on the right side of my head, so it affected a lot of the left side of my body as far as mobility and physicality and all that. And I remember when I was in ICU the night after my surgeries, I had this guy that was he was a nurse, and he was so cool. His name's Justin. And he told me, he said, John, he goes, I had an issue with oh, what do they call him? It was a physical therapist, but it was a different type of therapist. She worked with me with very small movements.
Occupational therapist.
Bingo. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
You are 100% correct. And I was having an issue with one of the things my occupational therapist had me do. And Justin said, John, you just got to use childlike faith and you can do this. And I looked at him and I said, Justin, I am 63 years old. I cannot go back to being a child. And he goes, let me help you with something here. I said, okay. He goes, when a child learns to walk, what happens? And I said, generally they fall. He says, yeah. And what does the parents and everybody else in the family do when the child falls? I said, yeah, they laugh. They go pick the child up and help him take another step. Yeah. Okay. Well, no one's laughing at you, but let's try a smaller step and see what happens. So I took a smaller step and I was okay. And he said, John, forgive me. This is hard for me. But he said, John, he goes, there's one thing you need to remember about taking these small steps that you're taking right now. And I said, what's that? And he goes, you cannot judge them.
Mm.
And I went, what? He goes, you've got to take these small childlike steps. But he goes, you can't judge this. I'm sitting there looking at him like, did you just become a coach? Did you just become my coach or something? Because that sounds like something I'd tell one of my clients. And he said, well, the shoe fits. But it was the best thing he ever did for me that night, because I was judging myself because I couldn't take a bigger step.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted me to take a small step. I didn't want to. I wanted to take a big step.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, don't worry about the big steps. The big steps will come. But right now, you need to learn how to do this all over again. And it's going to take small steps to do it. And you can't judge that. Talk about an oh my God moment.
Right.
That man has no clue what he did for me that night. But I can't wait till I can go see him again and thank him.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just try and take too big of steps and it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
Go ahead and take the small steps. Don't judge them, because you'll get there. You'll get to the point where you can take bigger steps. Just don't try and out jump your jump. a weird way of saying that, but I kind of thought it was cool.
I
Don't
still had a
try.
visual of you though, jumping in that puddle when you said that. So you made the visual very
Yeah,
clear.
with my Converse, my red ball Converse
High top
finish.
Converse.
I didn't wear high tops,
Oh.
which would have been a lot better than my feet wouldn't have gotten so cold. But I had high tops on, and yeah, but no, I had low tops on, so my feet got drenched and they got cold pretty quick. But so anyway, yeah, it just, like I was saying, the two things I wanted to come on today to talk about today were soften our stories. As Chaz says, reality is always a little gentler than the stories we tell behind it. And if we soften our stories, we take all that personal angst that was created by the happening in the first place,
Yeah.
takes all that out of there, makes us look at the story in a different light, makes us feel, our subconscious feels better
Mm-hmm.
telling that story. And then small steps, you know, sometimes it's not worth that big leap. Just take a small step and walk around it.
Yeah. And don't take
So
yourself so seriously.
that is for sure. I love, the thing I love about Don Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements, is those things are so strong. Don't take yourself so personally.
Yeah.
Don't don't take anything personally. You know, the thing I love about Don's book though is the very last one. Always do your best.
Yep.
You
Show
know,
up, sit up,
yeah,
stand up,
exactly.
whatever, wherever you are, whatever it is, you can always
Yeah,
stand a little taller, be a little happier,
yeah,
put a smile on your face, you know,
that is true. That
and
is very
there's
true.
just those little things that
Yeah,
matter.
yeah.
I was driving in an area that I wasn't familiar with, so I didn't see people, that I knew. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
driving along, and this person on the sidewalk, just big old grin. And it was a younger person. And I just thought, wow, a lot of times, most of the people these days, they've got their phones and they're like this, and you don't
Yeah,
look up, you don't make eye contact. And just that little smile,
yeah,
it like touched me. And I'm in my car driving, by,
yeah,
and that person has no idea
yeah,
what they did with
yeah,
that quick little smile and some eye contact.
yeah. Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. That's why I'm glad the pandemic's over. We can see people, they're not wearing masks anymore. We can
Right.
actually see people's smiles. And I
Yeah.
love that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
very cool. Very, very
That's
cool.
that's the little simple step that we can take today, right?
Exactly. Small step.
Small step.
Yep. Just
Well,
smile.
John, thank you so much
Oh, you're welcome.
for
It's
your
my
wisdom
pleasure.
today. I know you've got a lot going on today, and a lot of things in your life right now, but this has been such a joy to connect every
It's
day
my
for just a few
pleasure.
minutes
Absolutely. You bet.
and to get that wisdom from you, from your brain power.
Thank you. My
We
pleasure,
love you.
Lorianne. I love sharing um, every chance I get. I've been blessed to have a lot of years under my belt. A lot of business years, a lot of personal years, but I've learned so much in those years, and I love sharing it because you know and I'll tell you, the majority of the reason why I love sharing what I've learned is because the majority of the time it puts a smile on somebody's face.
Yeah.
And man, I just can't see smiles enough.
Yeah.
They're great. I
Yeah.
love them.
Easing
Especially
those burdens.
yours too, Lorianne. You got a bright, beautiful smile. So absolutely.
Well, thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. You are more than welcome. So I look
Okay.
forward to seeing what we come up with tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow's pretty exciting. We
Yeah.
just barely started this and we got invited to be on guests on a podcast. So we'll be,
Ooh,
yeah, we're just like up and coming, aren't we?
yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah, we're just, yeah, just these fun little things that we get to do that we
Yeah.
share with you
Mhm.
from the many years that we've both combined been working with people through things with them, even our own personal things,
Yes.
just, that John's going through and that I've been through. So there
Yep.
is hope. There is smiles to be had. There is peace in
Absolutely.
your heart, and we can go forward and share that with other people.
You
Thanks for
bet.
being here with us today, John.
You're more than welcome. My pleasure.
Bye,
We'll see y'all
everybody.
tomorrow.